In the quiet expanse of the night sky, there are questions that persist, lingering like stars just beyond reach. Among these questions, one that has captivated human imagination for decades is, are we truly alone in the universe? This inquiry, often dismissed as science fiction or relegated to the fringes of conspiracy theories, has become central to one of the most intriguing and mysterious phenomena of modern history: unidentified flying objects, or UFOs. The allure of UFOs is not simply in the mystery of their existence, but in the possibility that these objects might be proof of something beyond the limits of our understanding. Project Blue Book, a U.S. Air Force initiative that spanned from 1952 to 1969, represents one of the most significant efforts to investigate UFO sightings and to uncover the truth behind what many still perceive as one of humanity's greatest unsolved mysteries. Officially, it was a program designed to evaluate UFO reports to determine if they posed a threat to national security. But for many, it symbolized much more: a formal mechanism for gathering evidence and information on extraterrestrial visitors or military secrets, perhaps something more elusive, something hidden beneath layers of government reports and public denial. When Project Blue Book was declassified and its files made available to the public, a new chapter in UFO history began to unfold. It became clear that, while some UFO sightings could be attributed to misidentified aircraft, natural phenomena, or military experiments, many others defied explanation. Over the years, these cases have become touchstones for UFO enthusiasts, researchers, and even government officials who are skeptical of the official narratives. The question that remains is why some of these mysteries, despite years of investigation and considerable resources devoted to uncovering the truth, remain unresolved. What is it about these particular cases that have baffled experts, defied rational explanation, and even led to intense debates about the very nature of reality? One of the most compelling aspects of Project Blue Book is not only its official investigations, but the lingering question of what it left behind: unsolved cases, eyewitness accounts that challenge conventional wisdom, and pieces of evidence that seem to point in many different directions. These unsolved UFO mysteries represent the heart of a larger question that transcends government reports and scientific inquiries. Are we as humans ready to face the truth about life beyond our planet? Or perhaps, is the truth far more complicated than we could ever imagine? Throughout this script, we will journey through 11 of the most puzzling and captivating UFO cases from the Blue Book files, each one unique in its own right. These cases are not just records of strange objects in the sky. They are echoes of a mystery that has captivated humanity for centuries. From mass sightings witnessed by hundreds of people to encounters that defy all conventional explanation, each story adds a piece to the puzzle. As we delve deeper into each case, we'll also explore the psychology of those who witnessed these events, ordinary people who saw extraordinary things, and whose testimonies are often disregarded or diminished by authorities. What makes these stories so compelling is not just the mystery of the objects they describe, but the human element, the fear, the awe, the confusion, and the emotional impact these encounters had on those who experienced them. The first thing to understand about UFO sightings is that they are as old as human history itself. Ancient cultures, from the Sumerians to the Egyptians to Native American tribes, have described encounters with beings from the sky. These encounters were often framed in terms of divine or supernatural events, and the beings themselves were interpreted through the lens of mythology and religion. In modern times, however, UFOs have come to symbolize something different. They represent the unknown, the unexplained, the possibility of a reality far beyond our comprehension. As technology advanced, so too did the sightings, becoming more frequent and more well-documented. In the post-World War II era, with the advent of radar technology and the boom in civilian aviation, UFO sightings became an international phenomenon, drawing attention from governments, the military, and the media alike. One of the primary reasons why UFOs continue to intrigue and mystify is the human need for answers. People want to know what these objects are, where they come from, and what they want. But there's something even deeper at play here. UFOs challenge our fundamental understanding of the world and our place in it. If UFOs are indeed extraterrestrial in origin, that would mean that life exists elsewhere in the universe, which raises profound questions about the nature of existence, intelligence, and even the possibility of communication with other civilizations. If they are not extraterrestrial, then what are they? Could they be advanced military technologies, far beyond anything known to the public? Could they be a natural phenomenon that we simply don't yet understand? As we move forward in this exploration of the unsolved cases of Project Blue Book, it's important to remember that these events are not just mysteries of the past. They are part of a larger ongoing conversation about what we know, what we believe, and what we are still trying to understand. The more we learn about these cases, the more we realize how little we know about the universe around us. The questions raised by these unsolved UFO mysteries are not just about flying saucers in the sky. They are about the nature of reality itself. The stories you will hear are not merely tales of strange sightings and unexplained events. They are windows into the unknown, glimpses of something larger than ourselves. The mysteries surrounding these cases are complex and multifaceted. They involve not only eyewitness testimony and physical evidence, but also the psychological impact of encountering something beyond the ordinary. They challenge the boundaries between science and speculation, between reality and imagination, and between the known and the unknown. And as we explore them, we'll see how these mysteries continue to shape our understanding of the world, our place in it, and the possibility of life beyond Earth. What makes these cases so powerful is their ability to evoke wonder, skepticism, and curiosity in equal measure. They challenge us to question what we know about the world, to reconsider our assumptions, and to open our minds to the possibility that we are not as alone in the universe as we once thought. As we journey through these mysterious cases, we will explore not just the facts, but also the cultural, psychological, and philosophical implications of these encounters. And as we do, we'll be reminded that sometimes the answers we seek are not as important as the questions themselves. The pursuit of truth in UFO phenomena is not just a matter of finding answers. It is a journey into the heart of mystery, a quest for knowledge that has captivated humanity for centuries. As we begin our exploration of these 11 unsolved cases, let us not only seek the truth behind the UFO sightings, but also reflect on the deeper questions they raise about the nature of our world and the mysteries that remain just beyond our reach. With each case we uncover, we will find not only more questions, but also a greater sense of wonder about the unknown. And so, the story of Project Blue Book and its unsolved UFO mysteries begins not just with the investigation of strange phenomena in the sky, but with the human desire to understand the vast, mysterious universe that stretches out above us, beckoning us to explore, to question, and to dream. The legacy of Project Blue Book is deeply intertwined with the larger story of UFOs in the 20th century. Established by the U.S. Air Force in 1952, it was not the first attempt to investigate reports of unidentified flying objects, but it became the most comprehensive and publicly visible effort to date. Project Blue Book's creation came at a time of heightened tension in the world, particularly in the aftermath of World War II and during the early years of the Cold War. The skies above the United States were becoming more crowded, with new technologies in aviation and radar systems revealing strange and unexplained objects. These sightings, which had been sporadic and isolated, were now more frequent, more widespread, and harder to ignore. The Air Force, tasked with protecting national security, needed to take these reports seriously. UFOs, if they were truly foreign technology, could represent a national security threat. On the other hand, if these objects were simply misidentified natural phenomena or experimental aircraft, they could easily be dismissed. The challenge was to sort through the myriad of reports and determine what was credible and what was not. Project Blue Book was designed to address this issue. It would investigate UFO sightings, catalog them, and attempt to find logical explanations for the incidents. But while the project's official goal was to determine whether UFOs were a threat to national security, the underlying question was far more profound. What exactly were these objects in the sky? The scope of Project Blue Book was broad. It was tasked with collecting UFO reports from military personnel, law enforcement, and civilians alike, conducting interviews, gathering physical evidence, and analyzing the data. The project's main office was located at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, and it was overseen by a series of officers. But the most significant figure associated with Blue Book was Dr. J. Allen Hynek, an astronomer who had been brought in as a scientific consultant. Initially skeptical of UFO reports, Hynek's involvement would eventually lead to a dramatic shift in his views. When Hynek first joined the project in the early 1950s, he approached the investigation with a scientific, skeptical mindset. His role was to evaluate UFO sightings from an objective standpoint, applying the rigor of scientific inquiry to determine whether the reports had a basis in reality. The initial reports that came into Blue Book were often dismissed as misidentifications, weather balloons, stars, aircraft, and other mundane objects. However, as the project progressed, Hynek began to encounter cases that could not be easily explained. These were not isolated instances of misidentification, but well-documented events involving credible witnesses, military personnel, pilots, and law enforcement officers who had seen something that defied conventional explanation. One of the turning points for Hynek came during the investigation of the 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO incident, one of the most widely witnessed and thoroughly documented UFO events in American history. In the summer of 1952, radar operators at Washington National Airport tracked multiple objects in the sky, while eyewitnesses, including pilots and police officers, reported seeing lights and unusual craft over the city. The U.S. military responded by sending fighter jets to intercept the objects, but the jets were unable to make contact. Despite the large number of witnesses and the credibility of the personnel involved, the Air Force was quick to dismiss the incident as a case of radar malfunction or weather anomalies. Hynek, however, was not so easily convinced. He had always maintained that most UFO sightings could be attributed to misidentifications, but the Washington, D.C. incident challenged that assumption. Over time, Hynek's scientific skepticism began to give way to a more open-minded approach. He came to believe that some UFO sightings could not be explained by conventional means. In fact, Hynek would later coin the term close encounter to describe cases where witnesses had a direct interaction with a UFO, whether it was visual, physical, or even emotional. As the years passed, Hynek's transformation from skeptic to believer was mirrored by a growing public fascination with UFOs. While the government and military continued to downplay or dismiss UFO reports, the general public's interest only deepened. Books, movies, and television shows began to explore the idea of extraterrestrial visitors, and sightings of UFOs seemed to increase in frequency. Yet despite this growing cultural interest, the government maintained that UFOs were not a legitimate threat and that they had no interest in investigating the phenomenon any further. This disconnect between the government's stance and the public's growing curiosity about UFOs only fueled conspiracy theories. Some believed that the government was covering up evidence of extraterrestrial contact, and that Project Blue Book was nothing more than a facade designed to placate the public, while the military conducted secret investigations behind closed doors. The more the public became fascinated with UFOs, the more suspicious they became of the government's efforts to explain them away. It was in this environment of secrecy and skepticism that Blue Book continued its work, quietly cataloging reports and attempting to close the book on the UFO mystery once and for all. Despite the official stance that UFOs were not a threat to national security, Blue Book's investigations uncovered cases that did not easily fit into any conventional explanation. The files amassed by the Air Force contained thousands of reports, but some stood out due to the credibility of the witnesses, the physical evidence, or the sheer number of witnesses involved. These cases, especially those involving multiple observers or corroborative physical evidence, posed serious challenges to the Air Force's assertion that UFOs were merely a figment of the public's imagination. In 1969, after years of investigation, the Air Force officially closed Project Blue Book. The conclusion, as stated by the government, was that UFOs did not pose a threat to national security and that the majority of sightings could be explained by natural phenomena or misidentifications. However, the public was left with lingering doubts. Why, after so many years of investigation, were some cases still left unresolved? If UFOs were nothing more than weather balloons, military aircraft, or optical illusions, then why did certain reports continue to defy explanation? The closing of Blue Book did not end the UFO mystery. If anything, it amplified it. Many felt that the truth was being hidden, that there was more to the story than the government was willing to admit. In the years that followed, the legacy of Blue Book remained influential. The files that were declassified in the 1970s became a treasure trove for UFO researchers and enthusiasts. Despite the official government position, many of the cases recorded in Blue Book remain unresolved to this day. The files contain accounts of UFOs observed by credible witnesses, pilots, military personnel, police officers, who described encounters that could not be easily explained by conventional means. These unsolved cases continue to fuel speculation about extraterrestrial life, secret military projects, and even the possibility of government cover-ups. While the formal end of Blue Book did not mark the end of UFO investigations, it did shift the focus of research away from government-sponsored efforts and toward independent organizations and private citizens. Groups like the Mutual UFO Network (MUFON) and the Center for UFO Studies (CUFOS) emerged in the wake of Blue Book's closure, dedicated to continuing the investigation of UFO sightings and encounters. These groups began to compile their own databases, conduct independent investigations, and push for further government transparency regarding UFOs. The cultural impact of Blue Book's legacy cannot be overstated. The program, while officially ending in 1969, helped to shape the way UFOs are perceived by the public. The ideas of government secrecy, alien visitors, and extraterrestrial life that had once been confined to the fringes of science fiction began to move into the mainstream. UFOs were no longer something to be dismissed as the stuff of fantasy. They were now a legitimate subject of inquiry and debate. The fascination with UFOs, fueled by the unanswered questions left in the wake of Blue Book, continues to this day. The legacy of Project Blue Book is a complex one. On the surface, it was a government initiative designed to investigate a strange and potentially dangerous phenomenon. Beneath the surface, however, it is a story of unanswered questions, mysteries that remain unresolved, and the search for truth in a world that is often reluctant to confront the unknown. While Blue Book may have officially ended decades ago, the questions it raised and the mysteries it uncovered continue to resonate as new generations of researchers, skeptics, and enthusiasts seek answers to the age-old question: what are UFOs, and where do they come from? One of the most significant and enduring UFO events in American history occurred in the summer of 1952 over the skies of Washington, D.C. This incident, which involved multiple sightings of unidentified flying objects over the U.S. Capitol, remains one of the most widely documented and mysterious UFO encounters to this day. The Washington, D.C. UFO incident, sometimes referred to as the Washington National Airport UFO incident, was not a single event, but a series of sightings that spanned several days, culminating in one of the most dramatic encounters with the unexplained in the history of UFO research. What makes this case so compelling is not just the number of witnesses, but the credibility of those involved: military personnel, air traffic controllers, pilots, and law enforcement officers, all of whom observed the same strange phenomena in the skies. The event began on the night of July 19, 1952, when air traffic controllers at Washington National Airport detected unusual objects on their radar screens. Initially, the radar operators thought the objects might be malfunctioning radar signals or interference. However, they quickly realized that the blips on the screen were moving in a way that defied normal aircraft patterns. These objects were not stationary and were performing erratic maneuvers at incredible speeds. As the objects moved in and out of the radar range, they seemed to be deliberately evading detection, displaying behavior far beyond what was typical of conventional aircraft at the time. The military was immediately alerted, and the U.S. Air Force scrambled two fighter jets to intercept the unknown objects. What happened next added to the mystery. The fighter pilots, while in pursuit of the UFOs, reported that their radar systems were being jammed. Despite their efforts to locate and engage the objects, the planes were unable to make visual contact. Instead, the UFOs appeared to be toying with the jets, effortlessly maneuvering in ways that the pilots could not replicate. The UFOs were also reported to have engaged in unusual maneuvers, flying at high speeds, then slowing down or hovering in place, only to speed off again. In one instance, a UFO was tracked by radar moving at speeds that far exceeded anything a conventional aircraft could achieve. On the same night, police officers on the ground in Washington, D.C., reported seeing bright lights in the sky, which they described as star-like in appearance. The objects were seen moving in and out of the clouds, disappearing and reappearing, in a manner that was completely inconsistent with any known aircraft or celestial bodies. These police officers, who had no reason to believe they were witnessing anything out of the ordinary, were baffled by the strange lights. Their reports were consistent with those made by air traffic controllers and military personnel, further adding to the credibility of the incident. The following night, July 20th, 1952, the sightings continued. Once again, radar operators at Washington National Airport detected the same strange objects, now moving in patterns that seemed to intentionally avoid the radar systems. A second wave of fighter jets was sent up to try and make visual contact. As before, the pilots were unable to engage the UFOs, which continued to outmaneuver them with ease. In some instances, the UFOs reportedly appeared to be hovering in place, then rapidly accelerating to speeds that the jets could not match. The objects were tracked on radar, but despite the Air Force's best efforts, no physical evidence was recovered. The significance of the Washington, D.C. UFO incident lies not just in the sightings themselves, but in the reaction of the U.S. government and military. The Air Force, in an effort to maintain control over the situation, initially dismissed the event as a case of temperature inversion, a meteorological phenomenon that can cause radar signals to bounce off the ground and create false returns. However, this explanation did little to convince the public or the military personnel involved. The strange behavior of the UFOs, their ability to evade detection, and the consistency of the reports from multiple witnesses created a sense of unease that the government could not easily dismiss. Even at the time, many experts within the Air Force were skeptical of the temperature inversion theory, and some openly questioned whether there might be something more to these events than the government was willing to admit. The media, for its part, quickly seized on the Washington, D.C. sightings. Newspapers across the country reported on the strange events, and the public became increasingly fascinated by the possibility that something unknown, perhaps even extraterrestrial, was happening right over the nation's capital. The incident was covered extensively, but the government's official position was that there was no cause for alarm. However, the more the story was covered in the media, the more the public began to question the official narrative. If the UFOs were merely misidentified aircraft or a weather phenomenon, why had the military been unable to explain them? Why had fighter jets been dispatched if there was no real threat? The unanswered questions only fueled further speculation. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the Washington, D.C. UFO incident is the conflicting accounts and the lack of an official explanation that satisfied the witnesses. While the U.S. Air Force continued to dismiss the event as a case of misidentified radar signals, the pilots, air traffic controllers, and police officers involved were convinced that they had seen something extraordinary. Their reports were consistent and detailed, describing craft that performed maneuvers that were impossible for conventional aircraft of the time. In fact, the UFO's speed and agility were far beyond the capabilities of any known aircraft, and their ability to appear and disappear on radar added an element of mystery that has never been fully explained. For years after the incident, speculation about the true nature of the Washington, D.C. UFOs continued. Some researchers believed that the objects were experimental military aircraft, possibly advanced technologies that were being tested by the U.S. government or another nation. Others speculated that the UFOs were extraterrestrial in origin, visiting Earth in a way that seemed deliberate and intentional. Theories ranged from the plausible to the fantastical, but no definitive explanation has ever been found. The Washington, D.C. UFO incident is often considered one of the most important events in the history of UFO research. It was a watershed moment in the public's understanding of UFOs, as it brought the phenomenon into the national spotlight and raised questions that remain unanswered to this day. The event prompted further investigations by the U.S. government, including the formation of special committees to study the UFO phenomenon. The fact that these objects were witnessed by multiple credible observers, people who had no reason to lie or embellish their accounts, made the event all the more compelling. In the years following the Washington, D.C. sightings, the U.S. government would continue to investigate UFOs under the auspices of Project Blue Book, though many of the more inexplicable cases, including those from D.C., would remain unsolved. The D.C. incident itself would become a key case in UFO lore, often cited by researchers as evidence that something beyond the realm of conventional explanation was happening in the skies. Despite the official dismissals, the mystery surrounding the event endures, and the Washington, D.C. UFO incident remains one of the most intriguing and enigmatic episodes in the history of UFO phenomena. As with many UFO sightings, the question remains, what did the witnesses see that night in 1952? Was it a series of misidentified aircraft, an atmospheric anomaly, or something far more extraordinary? While the official explanation has remained elusive, the incident itself serves as a reminder that even in an age of advanced technology and scientific discovery, there are still mysteries in the sky that we cannot fully understand. The Washington, D.C. UFO incident continues to be a defining case in the study of UFOs, one that challenges our assumptions about what is possible and reminds us that sometimes the most profound mysteries are the ones we least expect. The night of October 4, 1967, marked a mysterious and unforgettable moment in Canadian history. Near the small fishing village of Shag Harbor, located on the southwestern tip of Nova Scotia, a UFO sighting took place that would become one of the most puzzling and well-documented cases in the annals of UFO lore. The Shag Harbor incident, while lesser known compared to some other high-profile UFO cases, remains an essential chapter in the exploration of unexplained aerial phenomena. What makes Shag Harbor so compelling is not only the number of credible witnesses, but the fact that the UFO in question allegedly plunged into the water, disappearing without a trace, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and eerie implications. On that fateful evening, a number of locals reported seeing a strange, bright light descending over the water. At first, the light was thought to be a plane or perhaps a falling star. But as it grew larger and moved erratically across the sky, it became clear that it was no ordinary object. Several witnesses, including fishermen, local residents, and even a Canadian military official, described seeing a yellowish-orange light that appeared to hover over the water before descending rapidly and crashing into the harbor. The light did not seem to burn out or dissipate as a meteor would, but instead seemed to vanish beneath the surface, creating a ripple effect on the water. This strange descent was accompanied by an eerie silence, which heightened the sense of unease among those who had witnessed it. As the object disappeared below the surface of Shag Harbor, more witnesses began to arrive, and reports of the strange light quickly spread through the town. A number of individuals, including several people who were outside enjoying the evening air, corroborated each other's accounts. They all described seeing the same bright object descend into the water in the same area of the harbor. The fact that so many people reported seeing the same thing, with such consistency in their descriptions, made the incident all the more credible. However, what happened next would deepen the mystery. Within hours of the initial sightings, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, had been alerted, and they, in turn, contacted the Canadian military. A full investigation was launched into the event, with both civilian and military personnel taking part in the search. Divers were sent into the water to investigate what appeared to be the site of the crash, but despite extensive searching, no wreckage, debris, or other physical evidence was ever recovered. The water in Shag Harbor, though relatively shallow, yielded no sign of the object that had supposedly plunged beneath its surface. Adding to the intrigue was the fact that radar operators at the nearby CFB, Canadian Forces Base, in Halifax, had also picked up unusual readings during the time of the sighting. Radar operators at the base confirmed that they had tracked an unidentified object that seemed to move erratically across the sky. The object appeared on radar for a period of time before seemingly disappearing, just as it had been reported by witnesses. Despite this corroboration from military radar, there was still no sign of the object once the search teams had mobilized. What makes the Shag Harbor case even more fascinating is the lack of conclusive answers provided by the authorities. The official explanation from the Canadian government, similar to many UFO sightings, was that the event was likely a misidentification, most commonly attributed to a meteor or an aircraft, though neither explanation could explain the unusual behavior of the object or the failure of search teams to recover any debris. Despite the military's extensive involvement in the search and the radar confirmation of an unidentified object in the area, the case was left largely unexplained, leading to even more speculation and unanswered questions. One theory that has emerged regarding the Shag Harbor incident is that the object that crashed into the water was not from Earth at all. Some researchers and enthusiasts have speculated that the object was an extraterrestrial craft that, for reasons unknown, entered the waters of Shag Harbor before quickly vanishing without a trace. UFO researchers point to the numerous eyewitness accounts, the radar confirmation, and the fact that no wreckage was recovered as evidence that the object was not simply a plane or meteor. Theories suggest that the object may have submerged beneath the water to escape detection, or that it was somehow able to disintegrate or vanish in a way that defies our current understanding of physics. Another theory posits that the object was of a military or experimental nature, possibly a secret aircraft or spacecraft that had been developed by the Canadian or U.S. military. Given the Cold War context of the 1960s, when military secrecy and technological advancements were at their height, it's plausible that the object might have been part of an experimental program that was being tested over a remote area. Some have even suggested that it could have been a foreign craft, either from the Soviet Union or another nation, though there is little evidence to support this theory. The lack of any official follow-up or disclosure from the military or government only fuels the speculation that the true nature of the object was being kept hidden from the public. Despite the lack of clear answers, the Shag Harbor incident has become an iconic event in UFO history. For years, it was largely ignored by mainstream media, but in the decades since, it has gained attention from UFO researchers and enthusiasts who continue to search for answers. The case has been investigated by numerous UFO groups, and many of those involved in the original search have spoken out about the unusual circumstances surrounding the event. For some, the Shag Harbor UFO remains a compelling case of extraterrestrial visitation, a brief and unexplained encounter that has left behind only mystery and intrigue. Interestingly, the Shag Harbor case shares similarities with other UFO incidents that involve underwater sightings. UFOs plunging into bodies of water, whether lakes, oceans, or harbors, have been reported in various places around the world. These reports often include similar themes of UFOs disappearing beneath the surface, only to leave behind little or no evidence. This recurring pattern has led some to suggest that there may be something unique about bodies of water that draws UFOs, or that these sites may serve as convenient places for UFOs to hide or land without drawing attention. In recent years, Shag Harbor has gained increased attention from the UFO research community, partly due to the declassification of government files and an increased public interest in UFO phenomena. The Canadian government has not officially acknowledged any extraterrestrial involvement in the case, but the public interest continues to grow. In 1993, the case was officially recognized as a true mystery by the Canadian government, acknowledging that the incident remains unexplained. In 2001, the Shag Harbor UFO incident was even commemorated with a monument in the village, further cementing its place in the history of UFO sightings. For those who have closely followed the case, the mystery of Shag Harbor remains one of the most perplexing and fascinating encounters in the world of UFOs. While there are still no definitive answers, the incident continues to fuel speculation about the nature of the object seen by witnesses that night in 1967. Was it a military craft, a meteor, or something more extraordinary? The lack of physical evidence and the continued silence from official sources leave the Shag Harbor incident as one of the most enduring unsolved UFO mysteries, still echoing with questions that remain unanswered. The Westall UFO incident, which took place on April 6, 1966, in the suburbs of Melbourne, Australia, is one of the most well-documented and intriguing UFO sightings in history. Unlike many UFO encounters that involve only one or two witnesses, the Westall incident was witnessed by over 200 people, including students, teachers, and faculty at the local Grange Horse Primary School. What makes the Westall case so extraordinary is not just the sheer number of eyewitnesses, but the fact that the UFO was seen by people from different vantage points, and the incident was accompanied by official efforts to suppress information and prevent further investigation. The events began on a typical morning in Melbourne, when students and teachers at Grange Horse Primary School were going about their routines. At approximately 11 a.m., a group of students outside noticed a strange flying object in the sky. Descriptions of the object varied slightly, but most witnesses agreed that it was a large, saucer-shaped craft, metallic in appearance, and flying at a low altitude. It appeared to hover for a moment before rapidly darting across the sky at an incredible speed, disappearing over a nearby set of trees. The object was seen by dozens of students and teachers, who immediately rushed to tell others. Some students, both on the school grounds and nearby, were able to see the craft perform incredible maneuvers that defied any known aircraft's capabilities. But the mystery didn't end with the initial sightings. As more people saw the object, the word spread throughout the area, and soon additional witnesses in the surrounding neighborhood, as well as residents from nearby homes, had also reported seeing the strange craft in the sky. People described the UFO as being a flat, saucer-like shape, silvery in color, and completely silent. The UFO was said to be hovering for a period before darting off, zigzagging across the sky in a manner that no known aircraft could match. It was moving erratically, almost as if it were playing with its observers. What makes the Westall case particularly perplexing is not only the volume of witnesses, but also the follow-up. After the incident, many of the students and teachers who had seen the craft were interviewed by military personnel, and an investigation was launched by the Australian government. However, within a very short time, a great deal of pressure seemed to be placed on the witnesses to retract their statements. Some students reported that they were told by authorities not to discuss what they had seen, and several teachers were allegedly asked to make official statements claiming that they had not seen anything unusual. The school and local authorities seemed to go to great lengths to downplay the event, telling the media that the object was merely a weather balloon or a misidentified aircraft. However, these explanations did little to satisfy the many witnesses, who were convinced they had seen something far more extraordinary. The official government and military response to the Westall incident raised questions about what was really being hidden. It became apparent that the authorities were trying to silence those who had witnessed the UFO and were intent on avoiding any public inquiry into the event. It wasn't just that the witnesses were being told to forget the sighting. It was that the event was quickly swept under the rug, despite the numerous individuals who had come forward with reports. Some UFO researchers and conspiracy theorists have speculated that the Australian government was involved in a cover-up, either to prevent public panic or to protect information related to military experiments or technology that might have been responsible for the sighting. In the years following the Westall incident, some witnesses began to speak out publicly about what they had seen. A number of students who were at Grange Horse Primary School on the day of the sighting began to come forward with detailed accounts of the object's flight path, its appearance, and the sense of awe and fear they had felt. Some of the teachers who were present also spoke about the incident, though many were hesitant to make public statements for fear of losing their jobs or facing ridicule. But as time went on, more and more people who had been involved in the event began to realize that what they had seen could not easily be explained away. The object's movements, speed, and behavior were unlike anything they had ever witnessed in any aircraft. It was not just an unusual aircraft, but something that operated by principles far beyond what was understood in the 1960s. One of the most compelling aspects of the Westall UFO incident is the fact that it was not confined to a single group of witnesses, but involved a diverse array of people in the same area. The fact that students, teachers, and people from the surrounding neighborhoods all saw the same thing is important in lending credibility to the accounts. This wasn't just a single eyewitness who might have been mistaken or imagining things. This was a broad cross-section of society who all saw the same unusual object in the sky. Further investigations into the case have uncovered several fascinating details. The location of the sighting itself, near the Grange Horse Primary School, was in close proximity to the now abandoned and secretive area known as the Dandenong Ranges. The Dandenong Ranges, in the 1960s, were believed to be a site for military testing, including radar and other advanced technologies. Some researchers have speculated that the Westall UFO could have been an experimental aircraft, perhaps a secret military project being tested in the area. However, despite these speculations, no solid evidence has ever been presented to confirm this theory. Over the years, the Westall case has become one of the most popular and well-discussed UFO incidents in Australia. It has been featured in documentaries, books, and numerous UFO research programs. However, despite the growing interest, the Australian government has never released any further information or details on the incident. No new reports or evidence have surfaced that definitively explains the strange sighting, and the case remains open to speculation and debate. The Westall UFO incident is unique not only for the sheer number of witnesses involved, but also for the extraordinary speed at which the authorities moved to suppress the information. While it was a relatively quiet, rural area, the involvement of so many students and teachers meant that the sighting could not easily be dismissed as a one-off event. The pressure to silence those involved and the lack of any clear explanation continue to fuel speculation about what truly happened that day. There are some who believe that the Westall UFO was an alien craft visiting Earth for reasons unknown, and the erratic behavior and rapid speed of the object support this hypothesis. Others suggest that the object was a government or military aircraft that had been misidentified by the witnesses. Some have even gone so far as to suggest that the UFO was a covert military craft being tested by the Australian or U.S. government, and that the incident was covered up to protect the secrecy of the technology. Despite the lack of a definitive answer, the Westall UFO incident remains one of the most intriguing cases in the history of UFO sightings. The combination of credible eyewitnesses, a pattern of official suppression, and the strange behavior of the object continue to captivate researchers and enthusiasts alike. What makes this case so compelling is not just the mystery of a UFO itself, but the broader questions it raises about the nature of UFO sightings and the lengths to which authorities will go to keep certain events out of the public eye. For many who witnessed the event, the Westall UFO remains an open question. Was it an extraterrestrial craft, a military experiment, or something even more unusual? The answers may never be fully known, but the incident continues to be a focal point for those who seek to understand the mysteries of the skies. The Westall case serves as a reminder that there are still questions to be answered, and that some mysteries may never be fully explained. The night of October 11, 1973, is forever etched in the memories of two men from Pascagoula, Mississippi, who experienced an encounter with a UFO that would change their lives. Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, two shipyard workers, had been out fishing along the Pascagoula River when their peaceful evening turned into a bizarre and terrifying ordeal. What they witnessed that night not only became one of the most famous UFO abduction cases in history, but also sparked national media attention, widespread skepticism, and continued debate in the world of UFO research. The incident began on that fall evening when Hickson and Parker, both in their early 20s, decided to relax by fishing along the riverbank. As the two men chatted quietly by the water, their attention was drawn to a strange, blue light in the sky. At first, they thought it might have been a plane or perhaps a helicopter, but as the light grew brighter and closer, it became clear that this was no ordinary craft. According to Hickson's and Parker's accounts, the object hovered silently above them, emitting a strange blue glow. The object was described as a disc-like craft, with a metallic surface that shimmered in the moonlight. It appeared to be rotating slowly and was hovering just above the trees, only a few feet off the ground. The men were transfixed, their curiosity mounting as they watched the object move closer. It was at this point that the strange events began to unfold. Suddenly, the UFO emitted a beam of light that illuminated the area around them, and from the craft emerged several figures, humanoid beings, though not human in appearance. Hickson described the beings as being about 5 feet tall, with grayish skin, claw-like hands, and no visible facial features. They appeared to be moving toward the two men in a slow, deliberate manner. In a state of shock and panic, Hickson and Parker tried to flee, but it was as though they were frozen in place. According to their accounts, the beings did not speak, but instead seemed to communicate with them telepathically. The beings then used some form of telekinetic force to draw Hickson and Parker toward the UFO. Before they could fully comprehend what was happening, both men were seemingly lifted off the ground and aboard the craft, despite their desperate attempts to resist. Hickson later claimed that he was separated from Parker once they were inside the UFO and placed in a small, sterile room where he was examined by the creatures. Hickson's description of the examination was vague but unsettling. He recalled being subjected to a series of procedures, including having a small needle-like instrument inserted into his body. The beings, he claimed, did not speak to him in words, but conveyed their intentions through thoughts and feelings. The experience, he said, was terrifying, as he had no way of understanding why he had been chosen or what the beings wanted with him. The encounter seemed to last for a period of time, though Hickson and Parker later agreed that their perceptions of time were distorted during the abduction. After the examination, both men were returned to the riverbank, seemingly unharmed but in a state of shock. They found themselves back in the same spot where they had been fishing, but the UFO had disappeared. The entire event, according to Hickson, lasted only about 20 minutes, but for him and Parker, it felt like much longer. The two men, still shaken by what had transpired, remained silent for a while, unsure of how to process what had just happened. In the days following the incident, both Hickson and Parker wrestled with their experiences, unsure of what to do next. They were well aware of how others might react to their story, and feared being labeled as insane or dishonest. However, after much deliberation, Hickson decided to report the encounter to local authorities. The Pascagoula Police Department took the report seriously and arranged for both men to undergo hypnosis sessions to help them recall more details of the encounter. In their hypnotic regressions, Hickson and Parker's accounts were consistent with their original statements. Both men described the same sequence of events, and under hypnosis, their memories seemed to be clearer, revealing additional details about their experiences aboard the UFO. Despite their consistent accounts, the story of the Pascagoula abduction was met with skepticism. Many dismissed the men's claims as a hoax or a product of imagination. Some critics suggested that the two men had been drinking or had fabricated the entire story for attention. The local media, however, took a different approach. The Pascagoula UFO encounter became a national sensation, with news outlets across the country picking up the story. Hickson and Parker were thrust into the spotlight, with their every word scrutinized by both the public and the media. The reaction to the incident was mixed. Some people believed Hickson and Parker, seeing them as credible witnesses who had experienced something truly extraordinary. Others were more skeptical, questioning the plausibility of their claims. The men were subjected to intense public scrutiny, and their lives were never the same. Hickson, in particular, became a figure of interest in the UFO community, giving interviews and appearing on television shows to discuss his experience. Despite the overwhelming skepticism surrounding the case, Hickson remained steadfast in his belief that he had encountered something beyond human comprehension. Over the years, the Pascagoula UFO case has remained one of the most enduring and mysterious abduction stories in UFO lore. Both Hickson and Parker have continued to stand by their accounts, though their lives were forever altered by the event. Hickson, who passed away in 2011, spent the rest of his life speaking publicly about his experience and attempting to make sense of what had happened to him. He believed that his encounter with the extraterrestrial beings was a life-changing event, one that challenged his understanding of reality and humanity's place in the universe. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Pascagoula case is the psychological impact it had on the witnesses. Both Hickson and Parker were ordinary men, with no prior interest in UFOs or extraterrestrial life. Their encounter, therefore, seemed all the more genuine, as they had no reason to fabricate such an extraordinary story. Their experiences raised questions about the psychological effects of UFO encounters, whether it was a physical abduction, a telepathic communication, or a profound psychological event that altered their perception of reality. In the years following the incident, both men struggled with the implications of their experiences, facing ridicule, doubt, and an overwhelming sense of isolation from those who didn't believe their story. The Pascagoula UFO case is also significant for its connection to the broader phenomenon of UFO abductions. It is often cited as one of the first high-profile cases where the experiencers claimed to have been physically taken aboard a UFO and subjected to an examination by extraterrestrial beings. This encounter, like many other abduction stories, has become a central point of discussion for UFO researchers and enthusiasts. What is it about these cases that makes them so consistent across cultures and geographical boundaries? Is there a larger pattern to these encounters? And what might they tell us about the nature of UFOs and their occupants? In recent years, the Pascagoula UFO encounter has continued to be studied by both skeptics and believers. While many aspects of the case remain unresolved, it remains one of the most intriguing and widely debated UFO events in history. For Hickson and Parker, the experience was an event that left them grappling with questions about the nature of reality, the existence of extraterrestrial life, and the mysterious forces at work in our world. As with many other UFO encounters, the Pascagoula incident leaves more questions than answers, but its impact on the lives of those involved is undeniable. The Pascagoula UFO encounter stands as a powerful reminder that the search for truth in the UFO phenomenon is not only about discovering new evidence, but also about understanding the profound psychological and cultural impact these experiences have on those who live through them. The case continues to captivate UFO researchers, enthusiasts, and the general public, reminding us that the mystery of UFOs is far from being solved. On September 16, 1994, an event occurred in the small town of Rua, Zimbabwe, that would become one of the most extraordinary and compelling UFO sightings ever documented. The incident took place at the Aerial School, a private school located on the outskirts of Rua, where over 60 children and several teachers witnessed a bizarre aerial phenomenon that has puzzled UFO researchers and skeptics alike. The Rua UFO sighting, often referred to as the Aerial School UFO encounter, stands as one of the most significant and well-documented cases of a mass UFO sighting, with its unique combination of multiple witnesses, physical evidence, and lasting psychological effects on the witnesses. The story begins on that clear, crisp September day when the children were outside at recess, playing and enjoying the fresh air. The Aerial School, situated on the edge of a forested area with a wide view of the sky, was an ideal location for such an event. As the children played, several of them noticed a strange object hovering in the sky. At first, they thought it might have been an airplane or a helicopter, but the object was far too silent and seemed to be completely still. It was described as a large silver, disc-shaped object that hovered over the school grounds for several minutes before suddenly darting off into the distance at an incredible speed. The children, ranging in age from 6 to 12, were initially shocked and confused, but the object's behavior left an impression on them that would stay with them for years to come. What happened next added an eerie and inexplicable layer to the encounter. Several of the children reported that they had seen strange beings near the craft. These beings, described as humanoid in appearance, were said to be standing by the craft or moving around it. The beings were described as having large, dark eyes and wearing tight-fitting, shiny suits. Some children claimed that the beings made direct eye contact with them, while others described a sense of telepathic communication, where the beings seemed to convey messages to the children without speaking. The overwhelming sense among the children was that these beings were not of this world. The encounter was brief, lasting only a few minutes, but it left an indelible mark on the children who witnessed it. The children's accounts were remarkably consistent. Despite their young age and the potential for imagination, the details they provided were strikingly similar. Many of them described the object as having a silver, metallic surface with a strange, glowing light that surrounded it. The craft was said to hover silently at low altitude, before it suddenly shot off into the sky with incredible speed. The most unsettling part of the encounter was the presence of the humanoid beings, who seemed to be connected to the craft in some way. The children reported feeling an unspoken communication from the beings, as if they were being told something, although no words were exchanged. The credibility of the witnesses was significantly enhanced by the fact that several teachers at the school also observed the object.